Hey, how's it going? This is Arite Ronan, and in this video, I'm going to give you my take on where Star Citizen is, where it's going, and whether or not it's the right time to get into it. So, first off, to get that last bit out of the way first, the game is playable, but realistically there's not enough time, there's not enough loops in the game to keep you engaged if you're somebody who's going to be playing for very long periods of time. You'll probably get bored, even though it's beautiful and there are a lot of missions in it. It will be somewhat repetitive. Not all the game loops are in. You don't have as much player interaction as you would want out of an MMO. It's an alpha. I'm busy for most of the day. I have a full-time job and more responsibilities on my hands. So for me, popping on for an hour or two at night, it works. I really enjoy the aesthetic of it. I think a lot of elements are very good. The ship combat is snappy. It's got some elements that need to be refined, and some of those things are going to be dealt with in this next patch coming, 3.9, or hopefully dealt with. But overall, the ship combat is pretty satisfying. The FPS, I like the graphics of it. The AI needs work, but the guns are pretty good. I like that they added attachments, which makes it much better. As a player who started this, backing Star Citizen 4 or 5 years ago, something like that, it's come a long way. So if you're a backer who's sitting on the sidelines saying, yeah, I don't really want to hop into it until it's done, quote unquote, done, then it might not be the right time. It's not a finished game. It is an alpha. They're adding more and more things. Should you hop in and see how far they've come? Absolutely. I think there's a lot of fun stuff in the game, and I think it's definitely worth looking at. But once again, it's not done, and furthermore, it's probably not going to be done for quite a while, because they've said themselves they don't really intend on ever being done. And there's nuance to that, but basically what they mean is they never want to stop developing it, even though they have some kind of hard points where once they get some things in there, they're going to be saying, yeah, it's basically a fully playable MMO, even though we won't ever really finish adding more things to it. That's really the better way to say it, because saying you're never going to release the game has a has a lot of negative connotation to it. So is it the time to hop in? If you want something that's playable, it's more of an attraction, a theme park that you walk into, visit for a little while, enjoy what's there. I think absolutely it's great for that. If you're somebody, I've got friends who play 20 to 60, 70 hours a week of games. Yeah, you're probably going to run through stuff to do and get bored pretty quick, other than just grinding up and buying more ships. So let's kind of put the pin in that. Where is it going? Well, with 3.9, there's some pretty key things that are getting added in, starting with ship combat. If you have played recently, one thing you'll note is that you always have to be concerned when you're fighting against AI, because their ships will go full speed straight at you, and they play chicken 100% of the time, except they're not playing. They'll run right into you, and maybe the computer is willing to sacrifice some of their NPCs, but it's frustrating. And anyway, they're implementing a system which should help that. They're doing collision avoidance, so the NPCs will now start adopting behaviors a bit more like a person who didn't want to, die from running into stuff. So hopefully that'll be a very positive change. That's one thing that's kind of not talked about as much when you listen to other people going over this patch here. But the collision avoidance, for my money, as somebody who does play the game quite a bit, that's going to be a big plus for me. It really is frustrating to be doing everything right, and then you get just you're doing like a mining mission where you're clearing the sentries, and you'll get 3 or 4 ships going straight at you, and yeah, you're trying to shoot them, but at the same time you're just trying to dodge them because they're going to ram you to death. It's just not it's not an immersive gameplay. So that should be very good. The other big thing that's going to be coming, which is combat related, will be the changes to desync. I'm not even sure that's the correct term. There was discussion of this with a developer in one of their kind of in-house videos, and he said, well, it's not really desync, it has something to do with physics. But suffice to say, for those who have played the last patch, 3.8, and those who are either considering getting into the game or considering loading back into it, maybe after a hiatus of not playing for a while, what you have is this weird desync thing where you'll play with a friend, you hop in, you get in the same group, you're on the same server, and one or two of you can't see the other person, or their head's invisible or something, and you'll get into a mission and you physically can't do the mission because sometimes the NPCs sync up wrong too, so one person can shoot them and the other one can't, but the NPCs can shoot both of you, so they're like ghosts, they're just incorporeal, and they can just blast you and you're dead, but you can't touch them. So that's pretty frustrating in many realms of gameplay, and I think where Star Citizen really shines is in its casual team play kind of chill atmosphere. You get a few buddies, you hop into a multi-crew ship, bebop around, do a few missions, share some laughs, laugh at a few bugs, have a good time. It's a very enjoyable evening to spend, and that's completely trounced when you get in there and you can't sync up. Nobody can see each other. One person's trying to lead, but other people can't see them. You have to start trying to lead them around like they're blind or something, and you're saying, okay, now turn to your right 30 degrees, walk forward 10 steps. It's just very, very frustrating, and it's one thing that when it's fixed is going to make a big difference to the overall enjoyability of gameplay. So those are some really exciting things coming with 3.9 as they pertain directly to combat. Beyond that, there's some other cool things, one of which is being able to manipulate your weaponry as far as swapping out attachments and doing a few more operations without having to go into the Moby glass, and it just physicalizes the process a bit more, which is what's one of the things that's lacking. It's an early step toward physicalizing much more in the game, which is one of those key foundational things that need to come out before the game can be, air quotes, released. So that's a pretty big thing. It's just kind of the beginnings of it. Also, they'll be expanding out the inner thoughts menu. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, when you try to interact with the game, you will hold down. For me, I bound it to E, all the way back to Half-Life. Use button. I'm old school, I guess, but I think the default is F. You'll hold that down, and when you go up to something, you'll have options. So it physicalizes the options, but at the same time, sometimes it's kind of clunky, and there's a ton of commands in the game. So one of the barriers to entry for a lot of people is just figuring out all the different commands that are out there. So what they'll be doing is adding in a radio menu, so you'll hold down that F key, and it'll come up with all the different options that are available to you. Also things like emotes and a few other things that should make the game just a bit simpler to use, and that should improve the player experience quite a bit. I think especially for people who are hopping right into it. The veterans out there who've been playing for years and are used to the 100 different keys you have to be familiar with to optimize your experience, you might just kind of go like, but I think it's going to be very useful and appreciated from the player base. So that's pretty cool. Beyond that, of course, they're always optimizing servers, so we should be seeing better performance with every patch. Fingers crossed. And then the other thing is they're adding a lot of player status stuff, which means, initially, if you played this game way back when, you just had a character and, you could run and jump. You didn't really have much in the way of other than like a health bar. That's about all you had. And then they added, kind of like an endurance thing, which was gauged by your heart rate, which, by the way, I'm a physiologist and their heart rate stuff's all wonky, but it's neither here nor there. So they have a heart rate monitor, so if you just jump all the time, your heart rate spikes up and it screws up a lot of other elements. Your guy can't aim very well, that sort of thing. And then they added, breathing in oxygen and having to keep track of a few more metrics. This is going to add even more metrics. Some of that being things like temperature, things like thirst and eating, which I haven't seen it. It's not even to player test yet, so it's still in the evocati phase, which means there's NDA, and a lot of this is kind of still behind closed doors. But the initial statements by CIG and the leaks out of the evocati speak to this being more of not so much like a survival game where you spend most of your time just running around trying to find stuff to eat and drink, because that would be awful, like literally awful. I think this is more of a light version. Think other MMOs where there are food and drink which may confer buffs or help to aid with debuffs. And in some situations you might have to drink more, say you're in the middle of a desert wearing heavy armor, for example. But it's supposed to be something that enhances the experience, makes it more immersive without being a burden. And let's hope that that's how it actually feels, because I think there's a lot of things already in the game. And my personal take is that if they start convoluting it further without it being an additive thing, it's going to make the game even more difficult to get into. So we'll be looking at that. I'm sure they'll be tuning it. It's not their intention to make Star Citizen into a survival game. It's meant to improve the payoff for making good decisions while punishing bad decisions slightly more. So that's another big thing. And really overall, the other thing that we're going to get with this patch is going to be the implementation, the first pass at the prison system. And the prison system is a step further into the punishment for bad behavior that you have in game. Currently, if you ram people, if you shoot people, kill people, blow up ships, etc., do bad stuff, you will accrue crime stats. Once again, this is just for people who don't know anything about the game. So you develop a crime stat, you become an outlaw, and there's some penalties to that. When you try to go to most landing zones, you'll get attacked, and currently the only way to clear it is to either go into a mainframe and hack in there, and then you can actually you literally hack it. You hack the terminal and change your crime stats and erase your crimes. Or the easy way, which everybody does, is they just let themselves be killed because there's no real penalty to it, and it's really fast. It's easy, and it's, cheap because, like I say, there's no penalty. So what's going to happen now, which will actually make people do the hacking thing more, which will add more game loops for people, one, trying to defend the mainframes and hunt down those people, and two, you trying to actually hack down your crime stat. But it'll disincentivize people from doing bad stuff because it'll be way harder to clear that crime stat. So now if you die, as I understand it, as you die, you don't just have your crime stat cleared and then you just pop up in your bed and go on about your day. It's that you're going to be transferred over to a prison cell, and from there you'll have a sentence. I think it's based upon how bad of a dude you are. So if you have a lot of crime stat, you've done a lot of bad stuff, you have a longer sentence, which, as I understand it, is not. It's not like you just log off for an hour and then the time passes. It's in-game time, so you have to physically spend, if it's 10 minutes of prison time, 10 minutes in prison. Now there are quests in prison. There are ways that you can try to kind of grind down and do work, do hard labor to reduce your crime sentence. And there's also ways you can try to escape, but that will also lengthen your sentence if you're caught. So I think that's going to add a lot of cool stuff. It will hopefully disincentivize the bad behavior enough that you don't have people just arbitrarily kind of being douchey for no reason. But at the same time, if somebody did want to, from a kind of a role-playing perspective, take on the persona of being a pirate or being a bad dude, then sure, they'll go to prison a few times, and hopefully they can get some tats or something somewhere down the road, and they can walk around with face tats and get shanked and stuff. I don't know. It's a whole different element of the game. It's gritty. It's very much in the spirit of the whole Star Citizen verse. So I'm pretty excited to see that, and that's just going to add more depth and immersion to the game. So very excited for that. And that's really the big stuff that's coming with 3.9. There's another landing zone on one of the planets. There's more stuff. There's a new ship. But as far as core gameplay goes, those are the real big takeaways, which are on the roadmap. There's maybe some surprise stuff that might pop in. They do that from time to time. But that's the stuff I'm really excited about. That is, unless they decide to just throw the lightning guns in, because that's gonna be cool. But nothing else confirmed. So how is the game right now? If you hop in and you play the game, it is stable for the most part. You don't have a ton of crashes. I personally can hop on there and maybe once every 3 or 4 hours, if I even play long enough to have a crash, you might find a crash every once in a while. There's still all kind of bugs. I was playing earlier today. I was trying to quantum jump around a planet, and I was consistently quantum jumping into the planet, which is an old bug that I hadn't seen in a really long time. Evidently, it's not gone entirely, but there are things that are frustrating. You'll try to walk into your ship, and it'll pop you, onto the roof or something. You'll glitch through a wall. Like, it's in alpha, okay? But it's pretty stable. Most of the missions work. The combat itself, the movements are nice. The flight models feel pretty good. There's things they need to work on as far as combat goes, but overall, if you compare it to past builds, it's perhaps got its server issues, but there's a lot of stuff in it. The frame rates aren't bad for the most part. And I think it's a generally enjoyable experience. At least that's what I've gotten out of it. But as I said earlier, they've got their own issues that they're working out with it. 3.9 should address a lot of the issues that were 3.8, and hopefully that'll be out within the next few weeks, and all of us, shuttered away in our basements or what have you from the virus. Hopefully we'll have a cool patch to play. So overall, I'm very excited to see the new patch and what it's going to bring. I'm actually thinking I might start doing some sessions where I'll play with my son. I've got an 8-year-old son who plays Star Citizen on my old computer, and that's mind you a good metric of how good your system needs to be. My old system is about 8 or 9 years old, It was a good gaming system at the time, but 8 or 9 years ago, and it runs Star Citizen just fine. Not on ultra graphics or anything, but it runs it no problem. So they've really done a good job at making the game playable on lower end systems. It's not like you're gonna flip open a cheap laptop and play on it, but it used to be way worse as far as the performance from the client side goes. So that's something I'll be looking into, is doing more team-based play. The community's talked a bunch about that as well. Overall, in the current build, this is April 11th, 2020. In the build 3.8.2, it's probably about a 6 out of 10 as far as overall build and playability and that sort of thing. I have a good time with it. I'm really biased though. Anything with space, gets me all excited. So I think from my friends who have kind of goaded into playing, they've all had a pretty good time, but it's usually the desync and a few bugs that just kind of turn them off at this point. So if you're an enthusiast, it's not a bad build. 3.9 should add a lot of cool stuff, and I definitely think we'll get a lot more people coming into play. If you're somebody who's just thinking about hopping into it, it's going to be a game that's going to keep getting developed. It's well funded. It's not going anywhere. Anybody who talks about vaporware are people who just don't have any idea about the game. They read an article a year ago, or somebody on a forum said something, and they're basing their decisions on that. Star Citizen is very well funded. The development team is painstakingly slow, but they're not rushing, and that's good. And anyway, I'm droning on and on. I'm gonna go ahead and cut it short there. Cut it short. Hell, I'm gonna terminate it there so I don't keep rambling on forever. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Leave a message in the comments. I always like to talk to people about Star Citizen whenever I can find a poor hapless soul who'll listen. So whatever you guys have to say, if you have any comments or questions, I'll get right back at you. And yeah, that's about it. I'll see you in the verse.